Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2022 film Prey, the latest installment in the Predator franchise. Now, before I go any further, I want to make some things clear. If you liked this film, or you loved it, or you're just a fan of it, I think that's great. More power to you. Different opinions are what keeps this world interesting, and I don't have a problem with that at all. Also, I want to give a little bit of a warning for those of you who don't want things spoiled, because I'm going to be going into major spoilers in this review, because that's the only way for me to really pin down my feelings on the movie. Now, let's get to it. As you all know, I was leery of this film from the moment I saw the trailer. I didn't care for the trailer. I wasn't that impressed by it. And the concept itself really wasn't as interesting to me as it was to a lot of other people. And I finally got around to checking this one out, and I wasn't a fan. I did not care for this film. I thought it was pretty below average. That's just me personally. But it's one of those movies where the first word that comes to mind to me is underwhelming. Like, I didn't hate it, but I still can definitely say I wasn't a fan, and I definitely don't have any desire to ever watch it again. The film was directed by Dan Trachtenberg, and I felt that his direction was decent. He did a good job setting up his shots. The scenes of the scenery and the sequences that showcase the setting were all well done. I wouldn't say IMAX worthy, but they were still well done, and he got a good use out of them, as well as the film's atmosphere and the mood. I think the direction has a lot of kinetic energy. It's not static. It's not something that just stands there and doesn't move. I also feel he had a nice use of camera angles at times. And when it comes to the action sequences, those scenes were really well shot. They were shot in a way to amplify the adrenaline and the impact of certain moves and attacks by the predator or by other people during the carnage. So it is ultimately a film that features some decent direction. It also looks rather polished and slick, despite the fact that it's a relatively low budget movie. The screenplay, though, by Patrick Ason, I thought was very lackluster. To me, this script does not really capitalize on the full potential of this concept. Even though I'm not super big on this concept, and I wasn't going in, as the film started and as things were unfolding, I was warming up to it, and then the script just dropped the ball for me. It didn't finish the deal. It didn't take it home. It's one of those things where I just feel things were not structured well enough. And one of them is a very key element of the film's plot. Naru. I didn't feel that her arc was written well at all. It starts off in a way that makes her come across like a petulant, whiny child, and the whole stuff with her just being pouty when she doesn't get her way was just not endearing or likable in any capacity. It really made it hard to root for her. That whole sequence where her mother's saying, "Why do you want to hunt?" and she says, "Because you all think I can't." That had pushy, whiny, "I'll show you" energy, not confident, "I'll show you" energy. Uh, just a just a quick change of dialogue would have made that scene come across better and less forced, like it's trying to force some sort of smashing the patriarchy message down your throat. She asks Naru, "Why do you want to hunt?" And Naru simply says, "Because I think I can." And that's it. That's all that you get when it comes to her fighting back against that in the film. And I think that would really be effective. You don't need the other scenes where her tribesmen talk down to her and say, "Shouldn't you be? We don't need a cook on the hunting party." That sort of stuff. You don't need all of that. You don't really. It's not really necessary. Just have her mention she thinks that she can hunt, and then she goes in and proves it with her actions. That's strong enough. That's really all that you need. And then it doesn't come across as too preachy. Also, I think the decision to make her fail and then fail and fail some more when it comes to her hunting things was a serious error in judgment when it comes to the screenplay, because it makes the moments when she becomes Jane Wick and takes out an entire camp of settlers with her tomahawk in her bare hands come across as rather silly and laughable. And then when she goes in and goes toe to toe with the Predator and really makes relatively quick work of it, I mean, gets in a ton of shots, really kicks the Predator's ass, other than maybe a couple scenes where she gets thrown around by the Predator. It makes that whole scene very cartoonish as well. And it's just one of those things where you're wondering where the middle ground is when it comes to her progression as a hunter. And before anyone says anything, I would feel the same way if it was a male character and the script handled things the exact same fashion. I would still think it was not very well done, because to me, she goes from pretty much 0 to 100 when it comes to her hunting skills. And it's not very plausible, and it just comes across like the screenwriter got lazy. And for me, it was frustrating because I liked everything that was kind of set up with her character prior to that, other than her pouty moments, where her big grand moment where she's supposed to show the whole tribe that she can hunt falls through and she's crossing her arms and pouting, or the whole stuff where, "Why do you want to hunt? Because you all think I can't," or the whole thing where she's like, "I can hunt," and then she never shows that she really is a good hunter. It seems like she just assumes that everyone else around her is going to buy into this idea in her head that she's this great hunter. But she doesn't show any reason why anyone, including the audience, should believe that to be the case. And that's just bad writing. Here's how you could solve that. How you could fix that problem. After the scene where she fails to hunt the deer, instead of her brother shooting the red hawk, she shoots it. She takes out the red hawk with her bow and arrow. And then it establishes that she's a good shot with her arrow, and that's a good step forward to show that, oh, she can actually maybe be a decent hunter because she's good with a bow and arrow. Scenes of her throwing her tomahawk at a tree doesn't cut it for me, because that's a stationary object, and that's essentially target practice. That's the equivalent of saying that someone that spends hours shooting baskets in their front yard and becomes good at shooting hoops without being defended and without playing against high-level athletes is someone that is ready for the pros. That's ridiculous to me. Like that's what this is. She doesn't show any reason for anyone to think that she actually is a good hunter or as good of a hunter as she thinks she is. And she only shows that when the writer decides to do so. That's lazy writing. So you set things up where she shows things early on. She shoots the Red Hawk. Then you have the scene with the bear. And I would have it where she would shoot the bear a couple times with some arrows. Maybe she has a trap set up. And it looks like she might actually catch the bear. But then the bear outsmarts her and gets out of it. And then the predator comes in and fights the bear and kills it. So in those two moments, you have established that Naru is a more plausible hunter. This isn't all just her talking about being a good hunter. She actually does show that she has the potential to be one. The scene with the lion, that doesn't count either to me because she fell off the tree and got knocked out and ultimately didn't really do that much. She failed again. And that's the thing. I don't mind scenes of her failing. That's what I'm saying. I actually think that's a good thing. Because there's even a moment where she gets in some hand-to-hand combat with one of the men in the tribe. And she holds her own. But then she still gets knocked out. So there's balance with her. And with her abilities. And then all of a sudden, when she's tied up at the camp and she breaks out, she's now Superwoman. And she's just taken a whole group of settlers out with her bare hands and tomahawk like she's Jane Wick or Black Widow. And it's just implausible and forced and lazy. And it didn't have to be that way. Also, I think the first 40 to 50 minutes of this story is incredibly dull and boring. And for a good reason. Because the stuff with Naru, like I mentioned, isn't as strong as it could be. Because the character isn't very likable. And on top of that, this whole thing of her trying to prove that she's a good hunter, it doesn't do a good job with that either. So then you're left with the Predator in really lame scenes where the Predator might as well be featured in a Predator-themed version of Wild America. It's the Predator going around and taking out a snake in like 5 seconds. And then the Predator goes later on and takes out a wolf. And maybe like a 30-second scene. And then it goes in and fights the bear. And I understand what the writer is going for. He's trying to build things up. He's showing the Predator hunting smaller creatures and then building up to the Predator hunting bigger game, which is us, humans. But this is not the first time that we have seen the Predator. This isn't anything like that. When you do that kind of thing, it works, in my opinion, if it's like the first installment in a series and this is the first time you were seeing a character like this in action. But that's not the case with Prey. So it just came across as lame teasing. And it doesn't help either that those scenes suck. The Predator attacking a CGI snake, a CGI wolf, and a CGI bear. None of that did anything for me. And none of those scenes are at all memorable or exciting. So you could have just had a scene early on where the Brave, who was wounded at one point in the movie, when the tribe in Naru went to go find him and they found him and he was wounded and cut up, you just have him get into a fight one-on-one with the Predator within the first 30 minutes. He holds his own decent enough, but ultimately gets overpowered and gets killed and his spine gets ripped out. And then the tribe finds his dead body later, with the spine ripped out of it. Then you have a better balance And you could have a scene where the predator goes and fights the bear or fights the wolf or something. Instead, you just have this slow little build up, and it builds up to the settler carnage, the settler massacre, which is a awesome and amazing sequence. I agree with a lot of critics when it comes to that scene. That scene is badass. The predator goes to absolute town on these settlers, just fucks them up right and left. It's not practical gore, but in that scene, the CGI gore was more convincing than the scenes where it's killing the bear, for instance. And there was a lot of creativity, different kind of weaponry. The shield was a cool addition. I even didn't mind the fact that the Predator didn't have the arm cannon. He had a different kind of weapon. So that was a really cool sequence. It was exciting. It was thrilling. It was gory. It was violent. It was badass. It was a great scene. But due to the way that things are set up with this script, that sequence made it so the film blew its wad a little bit too early. Oh, now we have this big grand sequence, and now you're just leaving. Now you just want more. You're like, why didn't I get a semblance of something like that earlier? Instead of these lame scenes where the predator takes out animals. Why didn't I have like a scene like that where he takes out another, like a group of settlers or some other tribe? No, I get that one scene, and then after that, you get the scene where Naru is all of a sudden Jane Wick, and it's a well shot scene, and it's kind of badass in its own right, but because of the way that things were written, it just comes across as comical. She's now Superwoman, and then that leads to the final bout with the Predator, with Naru and the Predator, and that has its moments. Some of the hand-to-hand combat stuff is decent enough. But I just feel like the way that that's set up, it's way too one-sided. She's just jumping off trees, and like she has superhuman agility, and slicing the Predator up. Like the Predator isn't much of a match, and outsmarts it to the point where the Predator cuts its own arm off with its own shield. And then at the end of the fight, she uses the Predator's tech against it. And in theory, this is something that you think might work. And I think a lot of people feel that way. But I don't think it works at all. And here's why. She sets up the Predator's helmet in this tree so she can outsmart the Predator. When there's a moment where the Predator thinks it's got her cornered and dead to rights, the Predator will use its weapon and then it'll kill itself, because the targeting system on the helmet will activate and it will target the Predator. Like I said, that's an idea that's fine in theory, but it relies upon the fact that the Predator is an idiot. It relies upon the fact that the Predator is one of the biggest morons in the fucking galaxy. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to give that shit a pass. That was stupid. It was insulting. And it was doubly so because of the fact that the Predator, in a sequence earlier, when the Predator gets involved in combat with Naru and her brother, the Predator gets his helmet knocked off and is trying to shoot the brother and misses him because his helmet isn't on, which controls his targeting system on his weapon. It's plainly evident that the Predator knows how to use its own tech. I mean, if it didn't know how to use its own tech, then it wouldn't be able to do what it's been doing. So it makes no sense for the Predator to fuck up twice and completely forget how to understand or realize how its own tech works. The only way she's able to outsmart the Predator is because of the fact that the Predator is as dumb as a beaver. Which is, she's smarter than a beaver, which is accurate, but honestly, so is probably everyone in the audience that decided to watch this movie. So, and by default, Naru, So it's not really that impressive that you're smarter than a beaver. But I could not believe that shit. And it makes it even more frustrating is the fact that this is something that was already done in the franchise previously. In The Predator, Sterling K. Brown's human villain character, he dies because of stupidity. He kills himself by shooting himself in the head with the shoulder cannon. This time around, it's not a human villain. It's the Predator. The Predator kills itself because it gets infected with a case of incompetence that's fatal. It's just like, what the hell? And it just reeks of laziness from the screenwriter. He wrote himself into a corner or something in terms of how she was going to stop or beat the Predator. And so he was like, well, she sets up its helmet and the Predator's so much of a dumbass that it doesn't realize that its helmet is off and still tries to shoot her. And then it shoots itself. But yeah, I mean, that fucking scene, like, that's the thing that pissed me off the most when it comes to this movie. Not even the design of the Predator, which looks kind of stupid and silly and goofy, but there have been multiple different designs of Predators in the comics and so on that looked kind of derpy too. So I'm like, that didn't really bother me a whole lot. I get why it bothers some people, but that didn't upset me nearly as much as the Predator just being a fucking moron. Now, I didn't really see the Predator as a wimp. That was just my interpretation, especially not after that settler sequence. I see the Predator as a different kind of breed, like a feral predator or a wolf predator. They're kind of into this idea of fighting creatures that are smaller than it without using weapons, or hand-to-hand stuff and then bringing in the weapons, or feeling pain. Like, that's the kind of thing. Like, they want to feel pain. They want to get the best of what the animal or creature has to give them and feel that pain, and then get the adrenaline and then the rush of killing the creature after they've given it its best shot, so to speak. So that's how I kind of interpreted that. I don't think the Predator was weak. The Predator was just a part of what the Predator decided to do when it comes to its preferred style of hunting. Like, it wants to feel that pain. It's kind of a masochist. Oh, and one more thing I want to mention is that even though it is R-rated and it does have gore, for some reason the director or the editors, they make this weird decision to not really go for the jugular when it comes to the way they showcase these visuals. You'll see a lot of weird camera angles that don't really provide the best visceral aspect of these scenes, of these bits of carnage. And you'll see other sequences where it seems like it's obscured, or it's just shot in a way where it doesn't have maximum impact. It's trying to be a little bit too artsy when it would have benefited from just being in your face and just more straightforward when it comes to the sequences where the Predator is attacking people or cutting limbs off or chopping off heads. That's why at times these sequences come across more tame when they should come across more carnal, more primal and intense. When it comes to the stuff with Naru, though, no, that he was totally a fucking pussy in that. He got his ass handed to him in what felt like a minute or two, way too easily, by a foe who he outweighs by hundreds of pounds. And it's honestly kind of insulting as well that Naru, she kicked the Predator's ass harder than Schwarzenegger, Dutch, and Danny Glover's character Harrigan combined, and or Adrian Brody in Predators, and it's just I think that's overcompensating a bit much, if you ask me. But yeah, the script, I felt it was lackluster. Didn't get the most out of its concept. Didn't get the most out of its characters. I feel that Naru could have been a legitimately likable character if they just changed some things when it comes to her arc and her attitude. And speaking of Naru, I might as well transition into the cast. I was not impressed at all by Amber Midthunder. I thought her performance was as mid as the mid in her last name. A very mid-tier performance. The line delivery was fairly flat for the most part. The scream, her primal scream at the end, that was not convincing at all. And anytime she tried to be charismatic was equally as unconvincing. I just wasn't impressed by her performance. I really don't understand the amount of praise that she's gotten for her performance. It's nothing that special. It's not bad. It's not terrible. But it's also not anything above average, if you ask me, especially when you compare her performance to like Sigourney Weaver and Aliens, or some of these other female leads in other sci-fi films or other action movies. Like, I really don't think that performance is that amazing. The rest of the cast, like Dakota Beavers as Dane DeLiegro as the Predator, Michelle Thrush, Stormee Kipp, Julian Black Antelope, Bennett Taylor, like all of these other performers were just delivered adequate but forgettable performances. Nothing that noteworthy. The score was eh. It had some decent bits of music here and there, not even remotely close to the same level as Alan Silvestri's work in the first or second Predator. But the score had its moments by Sarah Sachner. The cinematography, there were some nice looking shots by Jeff Cutter. The editing by Angela M. Catanzaro and Claudia Costello. It was good. It was a well edited film for the most part. When it comes to the technical merits, the film is pretty solid across the board. And the visual effects, I don't think they were as amazing or as awe-inspiring as some critics have made it out to be, but I think there are some shots that look pretty decent. Some of the practical creature work on the Predator, even though it does look kind of goofy, is still pretty good practical effects work. And I do appreciate the fact that it's not 2 hours. It's like 100 minutes, but it's really only like an hour and 30 something minutes. You take out the end credits, it's really is a 90-minute film. So I do appreciate that about the movie, but it still feels long because the first 40 to 50 minutes up until the settler sequence are just a snooze fest. And it's a shame because like I said, I was kind of warming up to this concept and this setting, and the writer just dropped the ball. He did not bring the game home. He didn't win the hunt, so to speak. And I was just left hunting for a more exciting or enthralling overall film. Yeah, it's better than Predators. Well, no, I would say it's probably on par with Predators. What I meant to say is it's better than The Predator, but that's not saying much because the bar that The Predator set was so low to begin with. It doesn't take that much effort to get over that hurdle. So I didn't hate it. It's just one of those films where I didn't care for it. I wasn't a fan. And I definitely don't get a lot of the hype. I definitely don't get the 93% in Rotten Tomatoes or critics who say it's the best Predator film since the first movie, or it's better than Predator 2, or it's better than Predator. Like, I definitely don't get that at all. I don't understand that one bit. I'm wondering if we saw the same film, because that just makes me scratch my head. But, teach their own on that one. Anyway, yeah, I don't really know what to say about Prey, except thanks for watching my review, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.